As you can see, G35 sedan continuing its process to get better. Brian, Team Hope Motorsports, just showing you the continuance of this project. We meant to put out some videos of R1 giving us some upgraded brakes, rotors, pads, White Line giving us a complete bushing set. We'll put those out soon. Sadly enough, I befell a gnarly accident at the track on my bike, went down, shattered my leg, shattered my wrist. So I've been out for a little bit, but continuing this project. As you remember in the previous videos, we had traded it for this car. We traded a CRV for, old CRV 2000. This car, the reason why it was traded, from what we could tell, is that, well, the body's not perfect. It's got some like little hash marks, hoping that somebody will help us out with the paint. But it also had 230,000 miles on it, as you can see. I've been working on it a little bit this morning, just buttoning things up. But the major reason, from what we could tell, is that it had a blown head gasket. So that's what this was for when we first installed it. We were able to drive the car for about 5,000 miles with this swirl pot, allowing us to bleed off the combustion vapors that were going into the coolant system. Because of that, we'll be showing you the one that we made in future videos that fits this car very well and is meant for the ZG chassis. As well, because it had a blown head gasket, well, I rebuilt the engine. You'll see that in the following clips, as well as the major update is I did a 6-speed swap. The old training was starting to slip, so there was no point in keeping the original in there. Needs some interior work too, that little guy. But yeah, I performed a 6-speed swap to obviously perform better than the original 5-speed auto. So it was a long and arduous task, but in the next few clips you'll see how I went through it. Hope you like the video. It should be pretty good. So here we go. So here it is. This is the 03 G35 that we are making a project out of. Currently what we're doing, 6-speed swap. That's the auto. You know, took the drive shaft out. Here are the parts from the floor. All the old exhausts, drive shaft. Next I'm gonna get the tranny out. We're actually at the same time replacing the engine too, because the head gaskets went on this engine. But it's gonna be a good little fun project, being that we already have all the White Line parts on it, coilovers, gonna put headers on it, already have the test pipes, full exhaust, possibly Nismo camshafts. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I got the engine and transmission out of the G35. Here's the donor 6-speed. Had to grab the shifter assembly for it separate. We had this training laying around the shop, and I think we divvied out the shifter at one time. So this model is a really old training, so like a 03, because you can see the longer pivot ball. That pivot ball is used for the stamped steel release bearing, or release arm. This is the release arm that would be for the shorter one here, which is the cast one, the stronger one. So I've got, you know, my release bearing, new release bearing holder, the upgraded needle bearing for the Pilot, and then Mtec shifter springs that I'm putting in. So hopefully my shifting quality is very nice. So got the G35 transmission, 6-speed, chilling. Got the shifter springs out, and these are the Mtec versus the OEM. The Mtecs are on the outside, and then the OEM's on the inside. This spring, which is the driver's side spring, it doesn't look that much larger in height, but the coils themselves are about 0.2 millimeters thicker, versus this spring, which if you try and squeeze it, it feels more taut, but also the height is a little bit different. I'm gonna put them in and try driving the car on a dolly. So I got the springs in. They basically just feel notchier, side to side movement. So basically if I put on like a heavy weighted shifter on it, it won't feel as floppy. So that's a good definite benefit. I do like notchier feeling trannies, race car trannies if you would say. But I think all in all, for about 30 bucks, it's a great little mod and it's gonna make the G feel pretty nice. So I'm putting the engine together now. As you can see, front cover is on. Well, the rear front cover. Got the camshafts in. Those are the Nismo cams. Adjusted the lash. Got the headers on. I'm just going at it. Now I gotta put the VTCs on. So tedious. It's annoying. Engine going in. It's all put together finally. Everything's set in. Clean off all that silicone on the covers, the oil pan, all that fun stuff. Just have to get it in, get the intake manifold on, begin the 6-speed swap. There you go. It is in. Now for the rest of the crap. And running. G35 project. Just looking at these Chinese exhaust manifolds I've got. As you can see, put them in and they hit the steering arm. See the nice rubbing that it was doing on the steering rod? Yeah, gotta pull them back out and bang them a little bit. The things you gotta do for cheap eBay parts. As you can see, this is the end result of getting that exhaust manifold, eBay exhaust manifold, to fit properly on the car. I was running it before, I had to bang this thing out, but that's how much I actually had to do to it to get it to pass by. As well, when I originally went to go put them on, it would not line up with any of the holes. So each hole had to be drilled out to 1/2 inch, as well as the last holes of the flange had to be cut so it would fit. But, I mean, I got them to fit. I would never say this was worth the time, because if you're paying a technician to install these things, it would take him, I don't know, way too much time to install them. So, not exactly the best example, but an example of why not to buy on eBay. Okay, continued little video of the G35 6-speed swap. This is the IPDM, and forum posts they talk about you have to power with a 12 volt the pin 53. I found it's actually the pin 43, which is the gray red down there, and then to a 12 volt switch, so basically ignition power, ran it over to the yellow red wire there on that plug. That is a 12 volt switch. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but it really just needs signal so that you will be able to start the car. Next I'll show you the neutral safety switch underneath the dash. Okay, I'm gonna show you the neutral safety switch underneath the dash. And basically in forums they're talking about the neutral safety switch, which is this green orange wire, and they're talking about wiring it all the way through to the neutral safety switch on the transmission. Well, I'm planning on swapping my ECU for an 05 ECU and harness, so I really didn't want to do that because that's just a lot of work and really not necessary, because all you have to do is really ground that wire out. So I just put a little strappy strap onto a factory bolt there and grounded it out. So now the car, so long as it's not in gear, obviously, because there's no true neutral safety switch, starts right up. Next, I'm gonna show a video of some other parts I had to use for install. This is the hardest part of the swap that I felt like. the pedals. I had to remove the complete steering column, gauges, everything came out to get the factory e-brake, which was the pedal, removed. That's the cable. Right now I currently do not have e-brake. I'm just putting it in gear to hold on hills and parked and stuff like that. But yeah, to get the factory pedals out, the auto one, for the brake, and then putting in the clutch pedal, that was probably the hardest part. You had to cut back all the sound deadening here, and then you actually had to remove or cut out the bracket for the e-brake, which wasn't too bad, but it did take time underneath a dash. So the only other thing is that you have to make a bracket at the top of the e-brake pedal to hold it in place. Otherwise, your pedal is going to feel all floppy. Continuing the 6-speed swap, we had to put in the factory clutch master cylinder reservoir there. I used factory components, factory master cylinder. I don't know if you could really see it down there. It's kind of dark, but you can see our stainless steel braided clutch line that we make. It's basically just one solid line from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder. It's just better than the factory one because it doesn't have that clutch damper in it. So yeah. And here's the clutch line underneath the car. As you can see, like I said, stainless steel braided, solid all the way from the master cylinder to the slave cylinder. You just route it in the factory like positioning through underneath the plastics here, and then up and then straight to the slave cylinder. It's an easy mod, much better than stock. Continuing underneath the car, as you can see, I had to cut the chassis where the original automatic shifter came through for the manual. It's only about an inch to inch and a half back, but it was late at night, not the most fun when you're trying to complete the job. But it honestly wasn't that hard. I do want to eventually cut this out completely and put in the manual piece of the chassis from like another car. For the drive shaft, I did use a manual drive shaft because we had one, but from what I understand, you can actually use the original automatic and just hit off the snout piece that originally went over the tranny there. Otherwise, I mean, this swap is pretty easy. It's not too hard like people say. It's about, I'd say maybe 6 to 8 hours. The only reason why it took me so long is because I rebuilt the whole engine at the same time. So if you're performing a 6-speed swap and you're wiring it the way I did, or how I showed, there's just a few things that you should know that will come up on the dash. Turn the key on. You can see the AT check light flashes at you. No big deal, it's just because the automatic transmission ECU is still in the car. Check engine light is on for the P&P switch and the speed input for the trans. The next thing that would come up is that you always need to turn the VDC off, because the car will freak out and think that you're sliding or slipping, and the slip light, until the slip light stays on all the time. This is because, well, the car thinks the tranny's slipping like crazy, or the vehicle's not moving, stuck in mud, who knows. So if you don't do that, it will freak out and stop you by itself. Now that the 6-speed swap is completed, we got more mods to look forward to for videos, Instagram posts. Don't mind the Rolls Royce. Next on the agenda is a 370Z diff swap with LSD and the 3.7 final drive to get a little bit more pep out of the bad boy, as well as, like I talked about in earlier clips, 2005 wiring harness swaps, which will include swapping out the MAF sensor and converting over to wideband O2s for data logging on UpRev. So that'll be perfect for tuning those camshafts. Look forward to those new vids.